This is Daily Homeless News, where tell the stories no one else will. Long gone are the days in America when a single paycheck was enough to support a family, pay the rent, raise children, and build a decent future. Today, if you drive through LA, San Francisco, or New York beyond the bustling streets and the glittering city centers, you'll see a cold, bleak reality in total contrast. Fragile tents line the sidewalks. Young addicts stumbling around like zombies, elderly people wandering without shelter, whole families squeezed into cars just to survive. In a place that's always been praised as the land of dreams, anyone can become homeless after just 3 unpaid bills. So what exactly happened? All the answers will be revealed in today's episode. Get ready to peel back every layer of truth hiding behind the polished surface of modern America, a place where giant skyscrapers cast shadows over people sleeping at their feet. And more importantly, we'll ask the hard question, was this system built to create a shiny image or to abandon those who couldn't keep up? If you believe that every human being deserves a roof over their head, then don't miss a single second of this episode. Hit like, share the stories you've witnessed, and don't forget to subscribe as we expose the truth behind the crisis of homeless in America. When it comes to homelessness in America, no region is untouched, but some states bear the weight of this crisis far more than others. In 2024, 5 states stood out not just because of their numbers, but because of how their wealth, power, and policies contrast so sharply with the suffering on their streets. These states aren't just statistics, they're warning signs. California isn't just leading the nation in population or innovation, it's also leading in homelessness. With over 181,000 people experiencing homelessness in 2024, California accounts for nearly 30% of the entire country's homeless population. That's not a typo. That's nearly 1 in 3 homeless individuals in the U.S. all in one state. Housing prices are a major driver. The median home price now exceeds $70, and rent in cities like San Jose or Santa Monica regularly surpasses $2,800 per month. Add in a shortage of affordable housing, decades of zoning restrictions, and weak tenant protections, and it's no surprise that people are being pushed out onto sidewalks, into parks, under bridges. Drive down the I-5 in Los Angeles or through the Mission District in San Francisco, and you'll see tent encampments that stretch for blocks. The so-called Golden State is beginning to feel like a state of emergency. If one of the richest states in America can't take care of its homeless residents, then who can? New York is a symbol of wealth, culture, and global influence. But underneath the bright lights of Times Square and the steel towers of Manhattan lies a growing humanitarian divide. The state has nearly 100,000 homeless people, many of them living in temporary shelters or riding subway cars all night just to stay warm. What's especially disturbing is the number of vacant luxury apartments in New York City, units kept off the market as investment properties, while families sleep in transit stations. It's a tale of 2 cities. One glitters with excess, the other grapples with survival. Florida has long been seen as the ultimate retirement destination with its sunshine, beaches, and no state income tax. But that postcard image hides a growing crisis. Nearly 30,000 people in Florida are homeless, and a significant number are elderly. Since the pandemic, rent across the state has surged by more than 30%, making it almost impossible for seniors on fixed incomes to find stable housing. Meanwhile, cities like Miami and Orlando have enacted anti-camping ordinances, effectively criminalizing homelessness rather than addressing it. Police are sweeping encampments, issuing fines, and pushing people further into the margins. In a state filled with beachfront condos and gated golf communities, the contrast couldn't be more stark. Are these laws protecting the city or pushing out the people who need help the most? Texas is a state that prides itself on freedom, self-reliance, and big ideas. But when it comes to homelessness, it's chosen a path of punishment over prevention. With over 25,000 people living without stable shelter, Texas has focused on banning public camping, forced clearings of encampments, and police citations, rather than investing in housing first programs or transitional services. Even Austin, once known for progressive homelessness initiatives, has rolled back support under political pressure and the loss of federal funding. Instead of expanding affordable housing, Texas is doubling down on criminalizing the visible signs of poverty. Can you really solve poverty by making it illegal? Seattle is home to tech giants, billion-dollar startups, and some of the highest salaries in the country. And yet more than 14,000 people in the Seattle metro area are homeless. That's not just a policy failure, it's a moral one. What's worse, nearly 50% of Seattle's homeless population are people of color or members of the lead community, reflecting deeper issues of systemic inequality. Housing costs have soared as tech expansion reshapes the city, but affordable options have vanished. Can we really call it progress if we're leaving the most vulnerable behind? These 5 states span the ideological and geographic spectrum, but they all share one thing: they are the front lines of homelessness in America. From Silicon Valley to Wall Street, from retirees to veterans, from big cities to warm weather destinations, no one is immune. Each state's failure tells a bigger story: that homelessness in America is not an accident. It's the result of choices. And until those choices change, the crisis will only grow. So the question isn't just who's suffering, it's who's next. For too long, America has been comforted by a lie that homelessness is the fault of the individual, that it only happens to the irresponsible, the lazy, the mentally unstable. But that illusion is collapsing under the weight of a new reality, one where homelessness is creeping ever closer to those who never thought they'd be vulnerable. One medical bill, one rent hike, one policy shift, and the floor falls out. Older adults, once the backbone of their communities, are now being priced out of the very towns and cities they help shape. The rise in housing costs is far outpacing Social Security checks and fixed pensions. Retirement is no longer a guarantee of stability, it's a period of survival. And the number of seniors falling into homelessness is climbing fast. If nothing changes, America will face a heartbreaking reality: tens of thousands of elders living and dying without shelter. Then come the veterans. Men and women who followed orders, fought wars, and returned home to be saluted, only to be left waiting. Many are battling untreated PTSD, physical injuries, and an overwhelmed Veterans Affairs system. Some sleep in cars outside VA hospitals because there are no beds left. If the system continues to stall, these heroes will be forgotten casualties of a domestic war no one wants to talk about. Low-income families are living in a permanent state of crisis. Even those with multiple jobs can't keep up with skyrocketing rent. One emergency, a broken arm, a job cut, a car that won't start can push them over the edge. When a family is evicted, the damage isn't temporary. It's trauma that ripples through childhoods, destroys routines, and breeds generational instability. Without urgent intervention, an entire generation of children could grow up knowing more about eviction than home. And let's not overlook the most vulnerable of all: people already living at the margin, single parents, people with disabilities, immigrants, and members of the LGBTQ community. These groups face discrimination, long wait lists for housing aid, and a mental health system that's barely functioning. Every time the government cuts funding or delays support, the risk to these lives grows. The next budget vote could decide whether they have a roof or a park bench. This isn't just a crisis, it's a warning. A slow-moving collapse of the safety nets millions once trusted. And if we don't act now, the question won't be who might be next, it'll be who's left standing at all. At the root of this growing emergency lies a fundamental and dangerous transformation in how America views housing. What was once considered a basic human right is now treated as a commodity, auctioned off to the highest bidder. At the core of America's ongoing housing crisis is a shift in how housing is perceived, no longer as a universal right, but increasingly as a financial asset. In many urban areas, real estate has become a preferred investment vehicle. Investors and development firms now purchase entire blocks, often replacing older, affordable housing stock with luxury apartments or high-end condos. This market-driven approach, while profitable for some, has contributed to rising housing costs and the displacement of lower-income residents. Neighborhoods that once offered diverse housing options are rapidly changing. As gentrification progresses, long-standing communities are altered, sometimes losing the very culture and identity that made them unique. These changes can have significant economic and social impacts, particularly on renters, seniors, and working-class families. At the same time, federal housing programs have faced reductions in funding. For instance, Housing First, a program that focuses on providing stable housing before addressing other needs, has seen declining political support in recent years. This shift has redirected attention away from long-term housing stability toward more enforcement-oriented strategies. Recent budget proposals, such as the one introduced by former President Trump, have further emphasized this transition. The plan includes a proposed $33.5 billion reduction to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, with $26 billion specifically cut from rental assistance. If enacted without replacement funding, these changes would reduce access to critical services for millions of Americans. Additionally, the Emergency Housing Voucher Program, which was created to assist approximately 60,000 households at risk of eviction, is nearing the end of its funding cycle. Unless Congress approves additional resources, these vouchers will expire by 2026, potentially increasing the number of people experiencing housing instability across the country. Rather than expanding programs that have demonstrated success, current proposals signal a contraction of housing support systems. This raises questions about the future direction of national housing policy and what role the government should play in ensuring access to shelter. As discussions about homelessness in America continue, policymakers, advocates, and communities face a complex balancing act between economic growth, property rights, and the moral imperative to provide safe and stable housing for all. If we continue on this path where funding gets slashed, where housing is treated as a commodity instead of a right, and where poverty is punished instead of prevented, then what we're facing is not just a failure of policy, but a failure of humanity. The phrase "homeless in America" won't describe a crisis anymore, it will describe a generation. Within the next 5 years, experts project over 1.1 million people in the U.S. will be without stable housing if emergency housing programs like AVE are allowed to expire without replacement. By 2030, that number could exceed 1.5 million, including more than 400,000 seniors and over 250,000 children. The streets of our cities will not simply have homeless people, they will have homeless communities. We're already seeing the early signs. More elderly citizens are spending their final years in RVs, not for adventure, but out of necessity. Parking lots at big box stores have become overnight shelters. Public parks are turning into semi-permanent camps. Shelters are overcrowded, underfunded, and turning people away. Schools quietly allow children to attend class without fixed addresses, while their parents search for work and a safe place to sleep. In some cities, entire working families are living in motels with their rent paid week to week by charities, trying to delay the inevitable. And instead of acting, many city councils are passing ordinances, not to fix the problem, but to erase it from view. Anti-camping laws, fines for loitering, evictions without alternatives. What once was a humanitarian concern is being recast as a public nuisance. We are not solving homelessness. We are pushing it into the shadows. The emotional and mental toll is devastating. The constant uncertainty, the humiliation of being invisible in a system that pretends to care, the slow erosion of one's dignity, it breaks people in ways that no statistics can truly show. For seniors, especially those who worked all their lives believing in the American promise, the idea of dying alone and unhoused is no longer a distant fear. It's a real and rising probability. If this is the trajectory we're on, we must ask ourselves a painful but urgent question. What kind of country are we becoming when even decades of hard work can still lead to a life and death on the streets? We may not be able to end homelessness overnight, but we can stop pretending it's someone else's problem. Each of us has a role to play. We can push for smarter, data-backed policies, increase funding for Housing First programs, renew support for the Emergency Housing Voucher Initiative, and reform outdated zoning laws that prioritize luxury developments over livable, affordable communities. We can support local shelters and food banks, not only with donations, but with our time, our voices, and our votes. We can elect leaders who recognize that housing isn't a privilege for the fortunate few, it's a basic human right. We can share the stories of the people behind the crisis, veterans who served, elders who built this country, families trying to break generational poverty. And we need to face the facts. According to recent projections, if the F program isn't refunded by 2026, over 60,000 households will lose their only safety net. That's not just a statistic, that's thousands of seniors, children, and working parents who could be forced back onto the streets. The number of people experiencing chronic homelessness is expected to rise by 10 to 15% within the next 2 years if nothing changes. We should also ask ourselves why we tolerate a system where stock prices climb while shelters overflow. Since when did we start measuring greatness by corporate profits instead of compassion? If you've ever walked past someone sleeping on the curb without looking twice, maybe now is the time to stop and look. Not with pity, but with purpose. Homeless in America is not an inevitable reality. It is the outcome of collective neglect. And that means we still have the power to reverse it. The question is no longer whether we can do something, but whether we're willing to. Because the real measure of a nation isn't found in its skyline, but in how it treats those living beneath it.